10, 9.
Cigarettes and rocket fuel. Sock it to me,
5,
baby.
4, 3, 2.
We choose to go to the moon.
0. All engines running. Commit.
We choose to go to the moon.
Liftoff. We have liftoff at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All 9 units, go all the way. Everything looks good. Roger. All right, copy.
KHCN-AM 4747, Houston, Texas. News you can use and talk that matters.
Folks, it's Oscar season, and it's time for y'all to enter the Houston Post 5th Annual Oscar Contest.
First prize is a beautiful 1969 Pontiac Firebird, courtesy of Frizzell's Pontiac City. Second prize is an 8-track Tempo tape deck, complete with 2 speakers and a year's supply of tickets to any participating movie theater. And there are 48 other prizes you could win.
See today's Houston Post for an official entry form. Must be postmarked by midnight, April 13th.
You love to go to the movies, and you know you'd look just right in a brand new Firebird.
Now, what's your fave for Best Motion Picture?
Funny Girl?
Oliver?
The Lion and Winter?
Rachel?
Romeo and Juliet?
Best Performance by an Actor? Alan Arkin in The Heart is a Lonely Hunter? Alan Bates in The Fixer? Ron Moody in Oliver? Peter O'Toole in The Lion in Winter? Or Cliff Robertson in Charlie?
And ladies and gentlemen, the nominees for Best Performance by an Actress are Katharine Hepburn in The Lion and Winter, Patricia Neal in The Subject Was Roses, Vanessa Redgrave in Isadora, Barbara Streisand in Funny Girl, and Joanne Woodward in Rachel.
Send your completed entry to Oscar, care of the Houston Post, 2410 Polk, Houston, Texas, 77001.
Entries must be postmarked no later than midnight, April 13th. Only 1 entry per person.
Today is Palm Sunday, March 30th, 1969. The Tim's Timepieces time at the Tone is 2 p.m. If your timepiece is right only twice a day, get down to Tim's Timepieces in Rice Village. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Schaefer with a recap of the week's news you can use. Since yesterday, thousands have been paying their respects in Washington, D.C. at the closed casket of former President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Mourners have included U.S. lawmakers, world leaders, and civilians. A funeral service will be held in the National Cathedral tomorrow afternoon, and on Wednesday, our nation's 34th president will be buried at the Eisenhower Center in Abilene, Kansas. Eisenhower, who was born in Denison, Texas in 1890, died at age 78 on Friday after a long series of illnesses dating to his first heart attack in 1955 during his first presidential term. His wife, Mamie, and their son, John, were near when Eisenhower passed away at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Eisenhower's death leaves the country with 3 living presidents, current Chief Executive Richard Nixon, his predecessor Lyndon Johnson, and Eisenhower's predecessor Harry Truman. In addition to being a 2-term president who championed and authorized our interstate highway system, Eisenhower was a 5-star general who was supreme commander over the Allied expeditionary forces in Europe during World War II. The former commander-in-chief said he wanted to be remembered for his contributions to world peace. President Nixon, who served as vice president under Eisenhower, said Saturday, quote, "I salute him as a soldier, statesman, and peacemaker," unquote. President Nixon also declared that Monday will be a national day of mourning, and most federal and county offices, as well as the major stock exchanges, will be closed. A local public memorial service for Eisenhower will take place at 12:05 p.m. Monday at First United Methodist Church at 1320 Main Street. Turning to other news, for the first time, a human being is being kept alive by a mechanical heart. On Friday at St. Luke's Episcopal Hospital, Houston doctor Denton A. Cooley and his team performed a 3-hour operation that attached an 8-ounce plastic pump to a remnant of the actual heart of 47-year-old Haskell Karp of Skokie, Illinois. The decision to use the device, previously tested only on animals, was made after an attempted operation to repair Karp's extensive heart damage failed, and he did not recover enough to leave the operating room alive. Dr. Cooley said he thinks that realistically, the artificial device could function well for a week to 10 days. In the meantime, St. Luke's is searching for a suitable heart donor for Mr. Karp with the aim of performing a transplant as soon as possible. The president of the Houston Managers Association has promised to make the strongest possible protest, quote unquote, against the city's upcoming 4% tax on hotel and motel accommodations. Charles C. McKinley said City Council did not consult with his members or give them any warning before adopting the tax on Wednesday. On the international front, a Viet Cong delegation rejected South Vietnam's offer to hold private peace talks. On Tuesday, it was announced that the U.S. death toll in the Vietnam War had surpassed 33,629, which was the number of American casualties in the Korean War. Today, communist rockets struck a Saigon police station and shelled at least 20 other South Vietnamese cities and Allied bases. According to sources, the United States has drawn up a plan for a Middle East settlement that would unify Jerusalem under Israeli control, but return to the Arabs other lands they lost during the Six-Day War of 1967. The proposal will be introduced Thursday at a meeting of officials from the U.S., Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. The John Birch Society says it has started a nationwide campaign against sex education in schools. The Society's founder, Robert Welch, calls sex ed courses, quote, a filthy communist plot, unquote. And finally, a significant development on the basketball front this week. Having led UCLA to its third consecutive National Collegiate Championship earlier this month, Lou Alcindor has chosen to pursue his professional career with the more established NBA over the ABA. The 7'2" center announced Friday he has verbally agreed to a $1 million contract with the Milwaukee Bucks. Coming up next, Alex Stuckey and Andrew Dansby discuss the week as it pertains to the Apollo space program and NASA, the government entity created by the late President Eisenhower. For KHCN, I'm Steve Schaefer.
You're listening to KHCN-AM 4747, Houston, Texas. News you can use and talk that matters.
Good afternoon, y'all, and welcome to Space Talk Sunday with Alex and Andy. The nation is grieving this Palm Sunday. We lost a great man, Dwight David Eisenhower.
That's right, Alex. Right this minute, in Washington, D.C., President Eisenhower's casket is about to be placed on a caisson for a funeral procession down Constitution Avenue to the Capitol, complete with a military band and a 21-gun salute. Then, inside the rotunda, they'll have an official ceremony with family, military brass, government officials, and such. President Nixon will give a eulogy. He was Ike's vice president for both terms, you know.
Waiting outside, there's a long line of folks wanting to pay their respects. The public will be allowed in at 4 p.m. The body will lie in state overnight. Then tomorrow he'll be taken back to the National Cathedral. After the funeral there, the casket will be taken to Union Station and loaded aboard a train for the long trip to Abilene, Kansas.
He's the son of Texas, born in Denison, north of Dallas. The Eisenhowers moved to Abilene when he was 2, and he always considered Abilene to be his hometown. Texas was good to him, though. He met Mamie Dowd when he was a second lieutenant stationed at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio in 1915.
Eventually, he returned the favor, indirectly, to Texas, and especially Houston, when Clear Lake was named the home of the Manned Spacecraft Center. I'm getting ahead of the story just a bit. Ike didn't bring NASA to Houston. Ike created NASA. And eventually, NASA found its own way to Houston, with a whole lot of help from Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, Congressman Albert Thomas, and powerful friends like George R. Brown, as we talked about last week.
The late 50s, 10, 12 years ago, was a tense time to be an American. You were just a kid, Alex, but when the Soviets launched the Sputnik satellites in 1957, we were all worried. We just knew those commies were prepping to militarize the cosmos. All of a sudden, we were losing the space race, and we couldn't let that happen.
My parents talked about it all the time. First, the bomb and fallout shelters, and then the Reds were in space and we weren't. Of course, they trusted Ike to get them through it. He had beaten the Nazis. But when Sputnik was up there, going round and round the globe, beeping and doing gosh knows what, spying on us, I just remember how worried the grown-ups were. And to us kids, it seemed like America just wasn't good at rockets.
You kids weren't wrong. We weren't having much success with our rockets, and the grown-ups were right to be worried. There was a lot to be worried about. When the Reds jumped out in front, well, it weighed on the American psyche. We're not used to losing, Alex.
So, what'd you do?
What did Ike do? I'll tell you, but first, let's listen to this commercial message. We'll get back to it in just a minute.
Imagine driving home from the store and a little girl chasing a hula hoop runs out in front of your car. Could you stop in time? Be sure. Take advantage of White's Complete Brake Installation Job Special. Regularly $39.88, now only $34.88 for most American cars. Self-adjusting brakes? Add an additional $6. A complete job includes all labor and True Arc precision linings fitted to each drum, brake drum resurfacing, and we'll rehone the cylinders, front wheel bearing cleaned, inspected, and repacked. We'll pressure flush the brake system and refill with new fluid. Of course, stop by for a free adjustment after the brakes have set. Need a front end alignment? Now only $7.50 on most American cars. White's Auto Service, 19 locations all over town.
You are listening to KHCN, Houston, Texas. News you can use and talk that matters.
Welcome back. Today we're celebrating President Eisenhower, a leader in wartime, a leader in peacetime, and of special interest to us, a leader in the security of America's future as the Soviet Union sought to militarize space.
Well said, Alex.
Eisenhower left office in 1961 after 2 terms. By then, he had proposed a civil space agency, and Congress had passed a bill creating NASA.
Those were good times in America. The economy was hopping, men had jobs, and families were buying homes in nice neighborhoods. But trouble was brewing as communism, Soviet Union-style stuff, replaced the governments of Eastern Europe, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia. Here's some tape from Ike's farewell speech from the White House in 1961.
Throughout America's adventure in free government, our basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. To strive for less would be unworthy of a free and religious people. Any failure traceable to arrogance or our lack of comprehension or readiness to sacrifice would inflict upon us grievous hurt, both at home and abroad. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration.
That's scary. A hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
We weren't in a shooting war, but make no mistake, the Soviet Union and her ilk were, and remain, of course, hostile to our way of life. Communism and oppression versus capitalism and freedom. At the same time, and in the same farewell speech, President Eisenhower warned us all, an alert and knowledgeable citizenry, to keep an eye on the military-industrial complex, and to be on guard against misplaced power.
Geez, and?
And Ike made sure that NASA was, well, devoted to peaceful purposes for the benefit of all mankind. Fair to guess the Soviet Union had evil intentions.
Andy, how did America go from being a lap behind in the space race to being just a few steps away from putting a man on the moon?
I'm fixing to tell you. Like we said, the Reds launched Sputnik, and a month later launched Sputnik 2. Both satellites were successful in their orbit of Earth. The entire country started to panic, but not Ike. As a military hero, he was calm and cool under pressure. Instead, he decided to take action.
Sorry to interrupt, but what was Sputnik? What was it capable of doing?
Good question, Alex. Sputnik, Satellite 1, or elementary satellite, didn't do much really, but the sudden success of the launch was unnerving. Sputnik was a small, polished metal ball, bristling with antennas. For 21 days until its batteries went dead, it orbited the Earth every 96 minutes at 18,000 miles per hour. Its mission was to transmit atmospheric data, which it did through a series of coded beeps, until its batteries died and it re-entered the atmosphere. It wasn't a weapon.
More of a psychological weapon than anything.
Remember, the Soviet Union is a secretive government. They don't broadcast their launches for all to see. Their failures aren't made public, but it didn't take long for us to find out about Sputnik. And a month later, they launched Sputnik 2.
So, all of a sudden, the commies were in space.
The entire country was in a panic. America had been working on rocket science since the end of World War II, and Ike saw this as a way to expand that work. The National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics already existed, so Ike seized that flag and ran with it. In November of that year, Ike appointed Dr. James R. Killian Jr., the president of MIT, as his special assistant for science and technology. This was just his first step in creating the civilian space agency.
Eisenhower saw the creation of NASA as a matter of national security, but felt it essential that NASA have a peaceful mission. This is a good time for a quick break. Be right back.
You're listening to KHCN-AM 4747 Houston, Texas. News you can use and talk that matters.
Howdy. Let's talk about meat. Sirloin, porterhouse, T-bone steaks. Just in time for your Easter gatherings and springtime barbecues. Drive on out to the grand opening of Houston Beef Company Incorporated. Free coffee and donuts this Thursday, Friday, Saturday only. Open 9 to 9. It's a carload beef sale. Tons of beef at direct-to-you prices. 100 free pork chops with the purchase of a side of beef. But you can fill your car with steak for only 3 monthly payments of $20.70. 138 pounds of tender, delicious beef for 45 cents per pound. Well, that's $62.10 for a carload of sirloin, porterhouse, T-bones, club steaks, and rib steak, plus ground beef. With any beef purchase, grab a 40-pound variety pack. Well, that's 20 pounds of chicken, 5 pounds of bacon, 5 pounds of sausage, 5 pounds of hot dogs, and 5 pounds of pork chops. $13.40. Charge it. 105 days, same as cash. Houston Beef Company, 420 East 20th Street, Houston, Texas.
Welcome back, folks. Let's continue with Andy's history lesson on President Eisenhower's role in the creation of NASA. During that time, weren't we trying to launch satellites as well?
We sure were, but we weren't successful. They kept exploding. For example, between 1957 and 1959, we tried to orbit a satellite using Vanguard rockets, but 8 of 11 attempts failed, some spectacularly. We did have some success sending up Explorer 1 on top of a Jupiter C rocket in January 1958. With that good luck, people soon started talking about sending humans to the moon, though Ike wasn't gung-ho on that notion.
Because he thought sending men to the moon had nothing to do with national security.
That's right. But in April 1958, Eisenhower gave a speech to Congress calling for the creation of a civilian National Aeronautics and Space Agency, what we now call NASA. Congressional members began filing bills, and in July 1958, Eisenhower signed it into law. The law called for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, which had been around since 1915, to be dissolved and folded into NASA. NACA had been fundamental in developing our air superiority during World War II. But the modern era, the space race, really called for a new organization with new goals and ambitions. The Defense Department also transferred non-military DoD space assets to NASA.
The space agency was born. And fun fact, the 7 Mercury astronauts were chosen less than a year later.
That's right. That's when we all met some of our astronaut heroes, real pioneers. John Glenn, Alan Shepard, Scott Carpenter, Gus Grissom.
May he rest in peace.
And the rest of those fine men. We're going to sign off a little early today so we can watch the coverage of the ceremony at the Rotunda in Washington.
Our hearts go out to the Eisenhower family. All the folks here at KHCN-AM 4747 salute President Eisenhower for his bravery and leadership through those troubling times. Before we sign off, we have just a couple spacey items to talk about. Save the date, folks. On Sunday, July 20th, you'll be gathered around the television watching Apollo 11 land on the moon. The fellas at the MSC pushed the program back a day because the Apollo 10 launch got pushed back a day.
Everybody take a step to the right.
And that means we'll be on the air while it's happening. We'll be watching the tube, too, and we can all talk about it together.
What else you got?
Okay, number 2. Here's a tidbit about Apollo 10. Tom Stafford and Eugene Cernan will detach Snoopy and descend to within 50,000 feet of the moon's surface. They will be following the same flight path as Apollo 11 down to the 50,000 feet mark, then rendezvous with Ed Young and Charlie Brown. And finally, folks, the Apollo 9 astronauts met with newsmen last Monday in Washington for the first time since the splashdown. And, according to Arthur Hill, the Chronicle's science editor, Rusty Schweikert, confirmed what we all expected. He was just a little space sick up there. Not a big deal, and once it passed, he said he was quite free to move around. Jim McDivitt gave the lunar module the crew's seal of approval, said Spider performed in an outstanding manner, much better than many people expected. Thank goodness. That seems like an understatement.
That lander is the first vehicle that is not capable of re-entering Earth's atmosphere, and the launch schedule has been tough on Grumman. Glad the crew gave it a big thumbs up.
Yes, sir. Please stay tuned, y'all, for Miss Amber and Space City Social. Then Steve Schaefer will be along with Sunday Afternoon Sports. Until next week, God bless.
Easter begins at Houston area Pick-A-Pair shoe stores. A galaxy of Easter dress shoes in a rainbow of colors. You'll be pretty as a picture in our Easter basket full of lovelies. Whites and hot pinks, whites and yellows, whites and blacks, whites and oranges. We have little girls' Easter shoes, too, $1.88. Handbags for summer, leathers, patents, straws, colors galore, just $2.94. Plus, 3 days only, women's summer slides, pearlized straw, almost any color, just $1. Our 10 stores in Houston and Pasadena are all open 9 to 9 daily. Hop on down to a Pick-A-Pair shoe store near you.
It's Miss Amber. Let's talk Space City Social. Everyone's still talking about it. Last Friday, Bob Hope was in rare form as the MC of the Fighter Pilots Association dinner here in Houston. Reportedly, he opened his act with this line: "There are so many pilots here tonight, it looks like the waiting room in Havana Airport." Evangelist Billy Graham is on a personal quest for a Southeast Asia peace formula, whatever that means. He's offered to share his findings and observations with President Nixon if the president wants them. And speaking of President Nixon, his daughter, Tricia, will be crowned queen of the International Azalea Festival next month. The 23-year-old says she's been pressuring her father to attend the coronation. Ever the clever girl, Tricia also managed expectations by warning reporters, "You know how busy presidents are." In Hollywood news, Miss Ally McGraw, that's short for Alice, is being called this year's Cinderella of cinema. Miss McGraw was plucked from 100 aspiring actresses, including some well-known names, to play the lead role in the film adaptation of Philip Roth's prize-winning book, Goodbye, Columbus. Here in town, 2 new rooms were added to the Bayou Bend collection. The rooms are being called the Dorothy Dawes Chilman Suite, named after a close friend and advisor to Miss Ima Hogg. In a rather bold move, the Museum of Fine Arts' new director says that a museum is its art, not its building. The man in question, 32-year-old Guy-Philippe Lawn de Montebello, a French-born former curator of European paintings at Metropolitan Museum in New York City. Rumor has it he once staged a discotheque in front of an exhibition. Bonne chance, monsieur. Slip into one of Bernardo's Paisley prints. The abstract design comes with hints of black, yellow, pink, or blue, available at Sakowitz sportswear shops downtown and at Gulfgate, Post Oak, and Town & Country Village. This is Miss Amber. Let's talk next week.
You've been listening to KHCN-AM. We thank you for your kindness. We hope you enjoy your Sunday afternoons with Alex, Andy, and the rest of the Space Talk crew.
This is Steve Schaefer with your Sunday afternoon sports scoreboard. If your timepiece is right only twice a day, get down to Tim's Timepieces in Rice Village. The Tim's Timepieces time at the tone is...
Need more junk in your life, space nerd? Sign up for the Space Junk newsletter at HoustonChronicle.com/spacejunk. Roger that.
Cigarettes and Rocket Fuel is a Houston Chronicle podcast. If you like the show, please tell a friend. That's how the whole podcast thing works, man. Chronicle reporters Alex Stuckey and Andrew Dansby are Alex and Andy. Miss Amber of Space City Social is Houston Chronicle Society reporter Amber Elliott. Steve Schaefer is the newsman. Leela Merrill handles our show pages at HoustonChronicle.com/Apollo podcast. The Chronicle's archivist is Joyce Lee. Scott Kingsley is the creator and producer. Staff artist Ken Ellis voices many of the ads. This week, he had some help from Chronicle fashion editor Joy Sewing and yours truly. By the way, the ads are fake. The days of the $35 four-wheel complete brake job are long gone, podcast fans. The ads were real when they were printed in Houston's leading newspapers, like 50 years ago. This week, our station IDs are contributed by Conroe Courier editor Alan Fossler, Miss Fish Gibbs, a good friend of the pod, and Carrie Blakinger, Houston Chronicle reporter and host of Behind the Walls, a podcast about Texas prisons and criminal justice. Want to know more about Apollo and the moon landing? Our Alex Stuckey and a crew of thousands, well, many, are week by week building a beautiful, entertaining, and informative website dedicated to all things NASA and Houston, Apollo, the moon, astronauts, all kinds of fun facts, you dig? Check out HoustonChronicle.com/missionmoon, please. The internet is amazing. Have you heard? We have listeners around the world. We're big in South Korea. Well, big-ish, really. We're even bigger in the UK. And hello, Kazakhstan. We see you, New Zealand. Our thoughts are with you. If you would like stickers to share with your friends, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Cigarettes and Rocket Fuel, Houston Chronicle, 4747 Southwest Freeway, Houston, Texas, 77027. While supplies last. Cigarettes and Rocket Fuel is a history podcast. We do not intend to glamorize the use of cigarettes any more than we condone the sexism and racism that existed in society and in newspaper pages in 1969. We hope cigarettes, sexism, and racism all become history one day. Our theme song, Crayola Girl, was created by Farrell Gibbs and produced by Brent Busby. I'm Nancy Sarnoff, Chronicle real estate writer and host of Looped In, a podcast all about Houston real estate, the dirt, the deals, the people, the places. Thanks for listening to Cigarettes and Rocket Fuel. Until next time, peace and love, y'all.